Center.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky
Come on, man.
on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. It's Wednesday. Thanks for being here. If you're watching on YouTube, we're up at youtube.com right now. You go there, type in Ross Kaminsky, and you'll see me. If I look a little sleepy, it's because somehow, I don't know, maybe in cleaning my room, my alarm clock got bumped in some way, and it didn't wake me up. So I got up just a few minutes ago, but I made it. I made it in time. Maybe I just normally I wake up anywhere from 3 minutes to an hour, but usually like 5 or 10 minutes before my alarm. So for me to sleep through the time that I normally wake up, I must have really needed a good night's sleep. Anyway, I made it. Let me tell you a quick random thing. I've mentioned in the context of talking about the John Elway dealers that Kristen, my wife, I guess both of us really, but it's for her, that we were the first customers at John Elway BMW. It's called BMW of Loveland. It's not technically called John Elway BMW. And anyway, I got to say, I never thought that I would anytime soon own a car that was fully or partly, which is what it is in this case, partly electric. I never thought I would be in the thing where we're plugging a car in, but that's what we got. And there's a lot to learn. I had an electrician come and run a 50 amp, 240 volt line, and we had installed a little charger in the garage, and you plug it into the side of the car. It almost looks like a smaller version of a gas nozzle. And the cord is like a thinner version of what looks like a gasoline line, except it contains wires rather than gasoline. You plug it into the side of the car like you're filling up with gas. Now, this vehicle that we got has a fairly small battery. It's not fully electric. And most of what it does is on gasoline. But boy, there's a lot to learn. It's quite interesting. And one of the things that it reminds me of, in I suppose a good and bad way, but just a thought point. And it's not as if this has never been thought of before. We've talked about it on the show, but it just kind of made it clear that the charger that we got for our vehicle is what they call a smart charger. And so you can do things like, you know, if you were operating within an electric utility system that makes it less expensive to charge a vehicle at night, and I do think actually that Xcel Energy, which covers much of Colorado, will do that probably fairly soon, but they don't have it yet. With this charger, you can do stuff like tell it to start charging at 11 p.m. or whatever would save you money. Right now, they don't have that program, and it doesn't really matter what time you charge. And in the app, you can see, because it can measure how much electricity it's putting through to the car, and you also tell it what kind of car it is, and it has a database that gives that has a basic understanding of how many kilowatts of energy will take you how many miles in that particular vehicle, right? So at the bottom of the app, it shows, as an example, over the course of X hours, you've added 30 miles of range to your car, and they have an estimate for the cost based on, you tell it what your utility company is and what plan you're on. And I said, I'm on Xcel Energy's ordinary residential plan. And so as it's charging, on the one hand, it shows you how many miles of range it's adding to your car. And in fact, I can look at this while we're talking here. And on the other hand, it shows you their estimate of how much you've spent on the electricity. And I like that point a lot because so many people, especially on the left, seem to think that electric cars mean a world with no what I guess what they would call pollution, but a world with no energy production. In the same way that they think that money is free if it comes from the government, right? They think you get a $1,400 check from the government, that's free money, and it didn't come from anywhere, and never has to come from anywhere. It's magic. It's the big rock candy mountain. There's an old joke that's not always funny, but often funny, where you ask people, where does food come from? And the answer is the supermarket. And they don't think about what's behind it, the ranchers and the farmers and the truckers and all that, and all this stuff that people don't think about. And so when we hear all this talk about electric vehicles, I think I actually enjoyed being reminded that it's not a free lunch. And in fact, depending on the efficiency of your car and the price of electricity, it's not even that much less expensive than gasoline. So I actually got the app open here. In fact, I'm holding it up to the camera for those watching on YouTube right now. How's that look, Shannon? Is that okay? All right, that's good. And at the bottom of the screen on my phone, you can see that it says charging complete, added 29 miles of range for $1.96. For $1.96. Now, let's just say, for example, let's just pretend that the vehicle that I bought gets 29 miles per gallon when it's running on gasoline. I don't think it's quite that efficient because it's a fairly heavy vehicle. It's an SUV, but let's just say for a moment that it gets 29 miles per gallon. That means that this amount of electricity, this amount of range that just added, 29 miles of range, is the same range I would have gotten for putting in a gallon of gas. You with me so far, Shannon? So a gallon of gas right now would cost about $2.45. Not very long ago, like around the time of the election, you could get a gallon of gas for around $2, right? And this, based on their estimate, I haven't verified with the electric company, but I bet you they're pretty close, cost me about $2. About $2 for 29 miles of range. So if I were comparing to 6 months ago, it's about the same price as gasoline. It's cheaper now, but not massively cheaper, right? I paid $1.96 for the amount of range that I'd pay $2.45 now for. But, I'm not someone like an Uber driver or somebody else who puts lots and lots of miles in a vehicle because they're driving around all the time, right? It's my wife's vehicle, not mine. She always has a nicer car than I do. And so when you're talking about someone who's just driving, sort of normal life, but not business driving, 10,000 miles a year, maybe 12, depending on what you're doing, right? You're not actually using that much gas, right? Maybe you're going to use 500 gallons, 400 to 500 gallons of gas a year. And if I'm substituting a little bit of it with this stuff, with electricity, it's going to save me a very small amount of money. Now, remember, this vehicle is can only run like 30 miles on electricity before needing to be charged again. It does generate some of its own electricity through the brakes and coasting and all that. My point is that with gas prices around here and the amount of gas or driving that a normal person does in a year, it only saves a little bit of money. And I'm glad for every penny that it saves. But what I will tell you is what really sold me on the vehicle, and we've talked about this before in other contexts, and I kind of hate to say it as a libertarian who thinks the government redistributes too much and does too much and all this stuff. What sold me on this particular vehicle was two things. Number one, if you're if my wife is driving a lot of just short trips, taking the kids to school or going to the supermarket or something like that, then she could potentially do almost all of her driving just on electricity. And while it wouldn't save a lot of money, it would save trips to the gas station. I like that. The other thing, though, is tax credits. I bought this vehicle because of the tax credits. There's a $7,500 federal tax credit. And there's a state tax credit, which was $4,000 last year. It's down to $2,500 this year. And that's, the one I've got because I got the vehicle this year. It was delivered this year, even though I ordered it last year. So $2,500 credit. Actually, I take it back. The federal, I'm trying to remember if the federal is $7,500 or if that was the original total. Anyway, the tax credit sold me on this thing. Yeah, federal tax credit up to $7,500. Yeah, so that's right. So when I file this year's tax returns next April, I'll be able to take a credit of $7,500 because I bought this vehicle, which knocks the price down to, I think, below the price of the gasoline-only vehicle. So why wouldn't you do that? But I do hope that people will keep in mind that at least as long as electricity is generated in a way that requires any kind of natural resource, right, it's still going to be producing some kind of quote-unquote pollution. Carbon dioxide, I put it in quotes because carbon dioxide is not pollution. And it's just a reminder that there's no such thing as a free lunch. I guess with this thing, the closest you could get to a free lunch would be if you had solar panels and used that to charge the vehicle. But a lot of these vehicles, especially the one I've got, it charges pretty slowly. That's one little bit of frustration about it, but it doesn't matter that much because we're charging it overnight while the car is in the garage. But it charges a little bit slowly, and so I don't know how long a solar panel could get it done. I don't know if a solar panel would be able to get it done if the sun is up that many hours in a day. Anyway, there's a lot to think about there, and I just want everyone to remember there is almost never any such thing as a free lunch. And with solar, right? I mean, you got to use it when the sun is out. Because right now, and this may change, and I hope it does, there is not battery technology that is sufficient to capture that energy on a utility kind of scale. You could probably set it up for your own home if you have enough money, but I'm not going to spend that kind of money. So, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It saves a few cents with gasoline prices where it is right now. But it's not the savior. It's kind of cool, though. I have to say it's kind of cool when you can drive on the electric motor and it's silent and huge amount of torque in the electric motors. It's pretty neat, and I'm glad I did it. But I like these vehicles a lot. I bought it for a reason. I think it's an incredible vehicle. It's just not going to save the world. That's my point. All right. Yesterday, two governors, but the one that made the biggest splash, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, announced that Texas is going back to operating as normal. Texas and Mississippi both ended their state's mask mandates. And we can certainly tell where the media is on this if I just go to the Google News page for this particular headline, and they show 4 opinion stories. 3 newspapers, and I don't know if this is a radio station or a TV station, but it's WFAA. I think it's a television station. So let's call it 3 newspapers and a television station in Texas. Here's the Dallas Morning News. Texas still needs a mask mandate, Governor. Here's the Star Telegram. We're so close to beating COVID-19. Why would Abbott end mask rule and make it worse? And here's the Austin American Statesman. don't ditch masks yet. We're still in a pandemic. And then they quote some dude who I don't know at the television station who says, reopening Texas is, quote, an ignorant and short-sighted decision, end quote, from Governor Abbott. So we know where all the usual suspects are. They want the mask mandate. Now, the Texas governor said that, and this is also a quote, removing the state mandate does not end personal responsibility. And I like that point. And I'm not going to dwell on what I think will or won't happen here. I have no idea. Texas is a very diverse state with lots and lots of conservative people who think that masks are some kind of political ploy to control us. And they certainly won't wear masks. And then there's plenty of liberals now in Texas, unfortunately for them, who will scold and snarl and sneer at people who are not wearing a mask. And we'll see. It'll probably be somewhere around 50-50. The governor is right that it doesn't end personal responsibility. And I think this is a really important point. When people become so dependent on government to make decisions for them, they lose the ability and the desire to make decisions for themselves. There are so many people who just wait around for government to do things. And it's all just part of my bigger thought process and conversation about how this massive government, ever more massive, is making us weak and stupid. And I don't know whether the Texas governor is a few days or a few weeks too early in ending his mask mandate, and the governor of Mississippi followed along with him. I don't know. It might be just fine. It might not be fine. I don't know. But I love his point about personal responsibility. I will say it's a fairly significant political risk for him, right? If he does this thing and then somehow there's a massive spike and lots of Texans are dying when people in other states aren't dying, he'll certainly pay the price for it in any kind of elected future he wants to have later. I'm not predicting that, and I sure hope it doesn't happen. I will say Texas has experimented with something else, and it didn't work out very well 2 weeks ago with their near complete catastrophe. I mean, it was a short-term complete catastrophe for most of Texas. Could have been worse, should have been better. But you know what? This is the kind of thing that can happen in a free country. Sometimes you don't get the best result, but often you do. And hopefully people learn from their mistakes, something that the political left doesn't do. It's part of why Hayek described them as having a fatal conceit. In any case, we certainly know where the mainstream media is. They want to bash the Texas governor all day, every day now. I hope Texas does great with this decision, and certainly the nation will be watching. We'll be right back.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver.